This video will review the characteristics of urinary pouches for ostomy pouching systems. Urinary pouches are typically used for urinary stomas, though they can be used for fecal stomas that have high liquid outputs. We will review the commonly available urinary pouches, looking at individual merits and concerns. It's important to note that there's no universal language for describing or grading urinary pouches. Most of the descriptors come from clinician experience. Considerations for urinary pouches include the type of tap closure with available markers to indicate if it is open or not, size of the opening of the tap, presence of a backflow valve, and nighttime drainage adapter and ease of use for setting up at nighttime. So we're actually going to go through each of the available urinary pouches from each of the companies. The first one that we're going to look at here is from Coloplast. And you can see that there is a tap here at the bottom that has just an attached little cap that you can push into the bottom of the closure there. The benefit for this particular one is that it can actually be done with one hand if individuals are struggling or they've had a stroke in the past and they only have the use of one hand, so that is something that can be done. There is a backflow valve in there. It might be actually hard to demonstrate, but if you put your fingers in here, you can actually feel that there's a weld in the pouch and that the urine wants to be directed off into two separate openings down on the side here. The idea of a backflow valve is that it actually prevents the urine from flowing back onto the stoma or the peristomal skin when the patient is in a supine position. So the urine flows down into the pouch, and the patient lays back and the valve collapses and prevents the urine from flowing back. You can also see with this particular pouch is that there's actually some welds down at the bottom here, and they call this the multi-chamber pouch, and the idea is that the urine actually gets distributed quite nicely over these three areas here, and the idea is that that actually makes the pouch flatter up against the abdominal wall so that it's not protruding quite so badly underneath the clothes, so it's better for concealment. As I said, sometimes these urinary pouches can be used for high fecal outputs. This one probably is not a great choice for that because the backflow valve in the pouch here is actually quite narrow. And some of the pouches you can actually break that valve and open it up. But if you do that with this particular pouch, you actually break the entire pouch and you'd have a hole in it, so not a great option. So as with all of the urinary systems is that you can actually hook it up to night drainage during the night. Because of the fact that individuals obviously will continue to make urine during the night, is that rather than waking themselves up and having to empty their pouch periodically during the night, it's easier to hook it up to straight drainage. So all pouching systems will come with some sort of an adapter to be able to hook that up at night. So for this particular one, we'll start off with it closed. You would actually undo that and you would use the urinary adapter here to put into the bottom. You could use just a regular Foley bag and attach that into the bottom here and place that to straight drainage at the bedside. Or the other option that you have is that they have their own bedside bag here, which has probably about a 2-liter capacity. And again, you would open that up and you would just hook that up like that, and it would be able to collect the drainage. Most people would actually wear pajamas at night and place this tubing all the way down the leg of their pajamas, just because it would actually prevent the tubing from getting all kinked up and caught while they're shifting and turning in bed. So it's easier to place it all the way down their pajama legs and have it hanging at the foot of the bed instead for security. The next option that we have is from ConvaTec, and as you can see, this one has a tap that's down at the bottom here, and this one's a little bit different in that there's an extra little cap, and in order to open this one up is that you actually twist it over to the side, and you know it's open because you actually have an indicator mark here with the red. So that system is now open. To close it, you would just turn it over. Again, this is something that can probably be done with somebody that just has one hand. available for their use. It might take a little bit more because it is quite large, and they don't necessarily need to be able to put the cap back on the bottom there. That's just to catch those last drips. Some people, because of the opening at the bottom here, is that some people say that you can't actually empty the entire pouch. Some urine is always at the bottom of the pouch because the hole that drains it into the tap is not quite at the bottom. It's a little bit raised. And the other thing you might notice here is, I'm not sure if you can actually see that, but while it looks like this is the size of the opening in the tap, way down inside is the real opening. And I would say that that is probably 1 millimeter across. So it's actually quite tiny. So again, it could be used for draining liquid stool if you had a high output, but it would have to be very liquidy, and potentially the mucus would not come through that opening. This one also has a backflow valve. It might be a little bit easier for you to see here that it's actually like extra welded pieces of plastic on the inside here. And this is one of the pouches that you can actually break the backflow valve just by putting your fingers in there, and the entire integrity of the pouch stays intact. So if you're using it for fecal drainage, you might want to think about breaking that backflow valve. And once again, is that they actually have their own adapters for nighttime drainage. So you would, when you're placing it to night drainage, you would take that little cap off at the bottom, and you would take this adapter and push it on. And you can actually see that there's almost like a little raised area here where these two teeth have to snap onto. And again, for night drainage, you would actually open up the tap. This would be hooked up to a night drainage system. ConvaTec has their own, or you could use the Foley bag as we've demonstrated earlier. And in the morning, you close it up, you squeeze these little arms together, and you pull it off, and you're no longer attached to the night drainage system. Hollister also has a tap type system, and this is the closed version of it. And when you actually turn that over to the side, you can see that there's a golden drip. So when the golden drip is facing forward, you know that the entire system is open. The tap is actually, again, a little bit deceiving in that it looks like it's very open at the base here, but when you look inside, it's probably about, I'm going to say 2 or 3 millimeters. It's a little bit wider than the ConvaTec one. And again, if you put your fingers inside, you can feel that there's a backflow valve. And if you're using it for fecal drainage, you can actually break the backflow valve, and it stays intact. Their adapter, we'll close that up. So if you're going to use your adapter, this is their nighttime adapter. And again, there's that little raised area. We're just going to push it up like that. You would turn the entire system open and hook that up to night drainage. When in the morning, close it up. And this one, you're actually going to squeeze these little arms together here and pull it off. I have to say this one's a little bit challenging sometimes to squeeze, and that would be, it might be hard for people who don't have a lot of hand dexterity. The last system is from Salts, and their tap system is a little bit different in that it, rather than turning from side to side, it's up and down. And again, there's a little cap way down at the bottom here, and to open it up, you just flip it down. There's no indicator, just like with the Coloplast one, that tells you whether it's open, so you'd have to know by the position. And you would close that up. And again, they have an adapter that looks similar to the ConvaTec one, and you would just push that up in place. You don't necessarily hear that snap, and again, you're going to squeeze on those little arms to pull it off. And when we open up the cap, or the tap here, is that you can actually see that it's fairly wide, so you're going to get a good flow. I have to be honest that I haven't actually tried to break the backflow valve in this one, so I'm not entirely sure if you can actually do that for this particular pouch and retain the integrity of it. They have their own night drainage system, so that if you didn't want to use that particular adapter for a Foley bag, is that they actually have one that's integrated into a pouching system. This one looks like it's got about a 2-liter capacity as well. And the same idea is that you would start off with everything closed, snap that on, You would open up the system so that the urine can drain, and at night close, or in the morning close it up, take it off, and put your little cap back on. So those are the main features for urinary pouches. If you have any other questions, you can contact me, or you can contact any of the customer service lines for the 4 major companies.